19. Roman law. Roman portraiture frescoes from Pompeii, 1st century AD, depicting two different men wearing laurel wreaths, one holding the rotulus, blondish figure, left, the other a volumen, brunette figure, right, both made of papyrus. Roman courts held original jurisdiction over cases involving Roman citizens throughout the empire, but were too few judicial functionaries to impose Roman law uniformly in the provinces. Most parts of Eastern Empire already had well-established law codes and juridical procedures. 102. In general, it was Roman policy to respect the mos regionis, regional tradition or law of the land, and to regard local laws as a source of legal precedent and social stability. 102. 216. The compatibility of Roman and local law was thought to reflect an underlying ius gentium, the law of nations or international law regarded as common and customary among all human communities. 217. If the particulars of provincial law conflicted with Roman law or custom, Roman courts heard appeals, and the emperor held final authority to render a decision. 102. 216. In the West, law had been administered on a highly localized or tribal basis, and private property rights may have been a novelty of the Roman era, particularly among Celtic peoples. Roman law facilitated the acquisition of wealth by a pro-Roman elite who found their new privileges as citizens to be advantageous. 102. The extension of universal citizenship to all free inhabitants of the empire in 212 required the uniform application of Roman law, replacing the local law codes that had applied to non-citizens. Diocletian's efforts to stabilize the empire after the crisis of the 3rd century included two major compilations of law in 4 years, the Codex Gregorianus and the Codex Hermogenianus, to guide provincial administrators in setting consistent legal standards. 218. The pervasive exercise of Roman law throughout Western Europe led to its enormous influence on the Western legal tradition, reflected by the continued use of Latin legal terminology in modern law. Taxation. Taxation under the empire amounted to about 5% of the empire's gross product. 219. The typical tax rate paid by individuals ranged from 2 to 5%. 220. The tax code was bewildering in its complicated system of direct and indirect taxes, some paid in cash and some in kind. Taxes might be specific to a province, all kinds of properties such as fisheries or salt evaporation ponds. They might be in effect for a limited time. 221. Tax collection was justified by the need to maintain the military. 222. And taxpayers sometimes got a refund if the army captured a surplus of booty. 223. In-kind taxes were accepted from less monetized areas, particularly those who could supply grain or goods to army camps. 224. The Temple of Saturn, a religious monument that housed the treasury in ancient Rome. The primary source of direct tax revenue was individuals, who paid a poll tax and a tax on their land, construed as a tax on its producer productive capacity. 220. Supplemental forms could be filed by those eligible for certain exemptions. For example, Egyptian farmers could register fields as fallow and tax exempt depending on flood patterns of the Nile. 225. Tax obligations were determined by the census, which required each head of household to appear before the presiding official and provide a head count of his household, as well as an accounting of property he owned that was suitable for agriculture or habitation. 225. A major source of indirect tax revenue was the portoria, customs and tolls on imports and exports, including among provinces. 220. Special taxes were levied on the slave trade. Towards the end of his reign, Augustus instituted a 4% tax on the sale of slaves, 226, which Nero shifted from the purchaser to the dealers, who responded by raising their prices. 227, an owner who manumitted a slave paid a freedom tax, calculated at 5% of value. An inheritance tax of 5% was assessed when Roman citizens above a certain net worth left property in but members of their immediate family. Revenues from the estate tax and from a 1% sales tax and auctions went towards the Veterans Pension Fund, Aereum Militer. 220, low taxes helped the Roman aristocracy increase their wealth, which equaled or exceeded the revenues of central government. An emperor sometimes replenished his treasury by confiscating the estates of the super-rich, but in the later period, the resistance of the wealthy to paying taxes was one of the factors contributing to the collapse of the empire. 54. Economy. A green Roman glass cup unearthed from an Eastern Han dynasty, 220 AD, Tumingyuanch, southern China. The earliest Roman glassware found in China was discovered in a Western Han tomb in Guangzhou dated to the early 1st century BC and ostensibly came via the Maritime route through the South China Sea. 228. Scholar Moses Finley was the chief proponent of the primitivist view that the Roman economy was underdeveloped and under-achieving, characterized by subsistence agriculture, urban centers that consumed more than they produced in terms of trade and industry, low-status artisans, slowly developing technology, and a lack of economic rationality. 229. Current views are more complex. Territorial conquests permitted a large-scale organization of land use that resulted in agricultural surplus and specialization, particularly in North Africa. 230. Some cities were known for particular industries or commercial activities, and the scale of building in urban areas indicates a significant construction industry. 230. Papyri preserve complex accounting methods that suggest elements of economic rationalism. 230, and the empire was highly monetized. 231, although the means of communication and transport were limited in antiquity, transportation in the 1st and 2nd centuries expanded greatly, and trade routes connected regional economies. 232. The supply contracts for the army, which pervaded every part of the empire, drew on local suppliers near the base, castrum, throughout the province, and across provincial borders. 233. The empire is perhaps best thought of as a network of regional economies based on a form of political capitalism in which the state monitored and regulated commerce to assure its own revenues. 234. Economic growth, though not comparable to modern economies, was greater than that of most other societies prior to industrialization. 235. Socially, economic dynamism opened up one of the avenues of social mobility in the Roman Empire. Social advancement was thus not dependent solely on birth, patronage, good luck, or even extraordinary ability. Although aristocratic values permeated traditional elite society, a strong tendency towards plutocracy is indicated by the wealth requirements for census rank. Prestige could be obtained through investing one's wealth in ways that advertised it appropriately: grand country estates or townhouses, durable luxury items such as jewels and silverware, public entertainments, funerary monuments for family members or co-workers, and religious dedications such as altars. Guilds, collegia, and corporations, corpora, provided support for individuals to succeed through networking, sharing sound business practices, and a willingness to work. 169. Currency and banking. The early empire was monetized to a near universal extent, in the sense of using money as a way to press prices and debts. 236. The Sistertius, plural Sistertii, English sesterces, symbolized as HS, Wei's basic unit of reckoning value into the 4th century, 237, though the silver denarius, worth 4 sesterces, was used also for accounting beginning in the Severan dynasty. 238. The smallest coin commonly circulated was the bronze as, plural aes or ases, 1/10 denarius. 239. Bullion and ingots seem not to have counted as pecunia, money, and were used only on the frontiers for transacting business or buying property. Romans in the 1st and 2nd centuries counted coins, rather than weighing them, an indication that the coin was valued on its face, not for its metal content. This tendency towards fiat money led eventually to the debasement of Roman coinage, with consequences in the later empire. 240. The standardization of money throughout the empire promoted trade and market integration. 236. The high amount of metal coinage in circulation increased the money supply for trading or saving. 241. Currency denominations. 242. 211 Cad 14 AD 286 296 denarius equals 10 ases aureus equals 25 denar 2 aurea equals 60 per pound of gold quinurus equals 5 ases denar 2 equals 16 ases silver coins, contemporary. Name unknown, equals 96 to a pound of silver sestertius equals 2.5 ases sesterces equals 4 ases bronze coins. Contemporary name unknown, equals value unknown as equals 1 as equals 1. Rome had no central bank, and regulation of the banking system was minimal. Banks of classical antiquity typically kept less in reserves than the full total of customers' deposits. A typical bank had fairly limited capital, and often only one principal, though a bank might have as many as 6 to 15 principals. Seneca assumes that anyone involved in Roman commerce needs access to credit. 240. A professional deposit banker, Argentrius, Cocta Argentrius, or later Numulus, received and held posits for a fixed or indefinite term, and lent money to third parties. The senatorial elite were involved heavily in private lending, both as creditors and borrowers, making loans from their personal fortunes on the basis of social connections. 244. The holder of a debt could use it as a means of payment by transferring it to another party, without cash changing hands. Although it has sometimes been thought that ancient solidus issued under Constantine II and on the reverse Victoria, one of last deities to appear on Roman coins, gradually transforming an angel under Christian rule. 243. Rome lacked paper or documentary transactions. The system of banks throughout the empire also permitted the exchange of very large sums without the physical transfer of coins, in part because of risks of moving large amounts of cash, particularly by sea. Only in serious credit shortage is known to have occurred in the early empire, a credit crisis in 33 AD that put a number of senators at risk. The central government rescued the market through a loan of 100 million HS made by the Emperor Tiberius to the banks, Mensa. 245. Generally, available capital exceeded the amount needed by borrowers. And LT. 240. The central government itself did not borrow money, and without public debt had to fund deficits from cash reserves. 246. Emperors of the Antonine and Severan dynasties overall debased the currency, particularly the denarius under the pressures of meeting military payrolls. 237. Sudden inflation during the reign of Commodus damaged the credit market. 240. In the mid-200s, the supply of specie contracted sharply. 237. Conditions during the crisis of the 3rd century, such as reductions in long-distance trade, disruption of mining operations, and the physical transfer of gold coinage outside the empire by invading enemies greatly diminished the money supply and the banking sector by the year 300. 237, 240, although Roman coinage had long been fiat money or fiduciary currency, general economic anxieties came to a head under Aurelian and bankers lost confidence in coins legitimately issued by the central government. Despite Diocletian's introduction of the gold solidus and monetary reforms, the credit market of the empire never recovered its former robustness. 240, mining and metallurgy. Landscape resulting from the ruinarmentium mining technique at Las Medulas, Spain, one of the most important gold mines in the Roman Empire. The main mining regions of the empire were the Iberian Peninsula, gold, silver, copper, tin, lead, gall, gold, silver, iron, Britain, mainly iron, lead, tin, the Danubian provinces, gold, iron, Macedonia and Thrace, gold, silver, and Asia Minor, gold, silver, iron, tin. Intensive large-scale mining of alluvial deposits, and by means of open-cast mining and underground mining took place from the reign of Augustus up to the early 3rd century AD, when the instability of the empire disrupted production. The gold mines of Dacia, for instance, were no longer available for Roman exploitation after the province was surrendered in 271. Mining seems to have resumed to some extent during the 4th century. 247, hydraulic mining, which Pliny referred to as ruinamontium, ruin of the mountains, allowed base and precious metals to be extracted on a proto-industrial scale. 248. The total annual iron output is estimated at 82,500 tons. 249. Copper was produced at an annual rate of 15,000 t. 248, 250, and lead at 80,000 t. 248, 251, 252. Both production levels unmatched until the Industrial Revolution. Winking sat Smiley. 250, 251, 252, 253, Hispania alone had a 40% share in world lead production. 251. The high lead output was a byproduct of extensive silver mining which reached 200 t per annum. At its peak around the mid-2nd century AD, the Roman silver stock is estimated at 10,000 t, 5 to 10 times larger than the combined silver mass of medieval Europe and the Caliphate around 800 AD. 252, 254, as an indication of scale of Roman metal production. Lead pollution in the Greenland ice sheet quadrupled over its prehistoric levels during the imperial era and dropped again thereafter. 255, transportation and communication. The tabula Peutingeriana, Latin for the Peutinger map, an itinerarium often assumed to be based on the Roman cursus publicus, the network of state-maintained roads. The Roman Empire completely encircled the Mediterranean, with the called our sea, Mare Nostrum. 256. Roman sailing vessels navigated the Mediterranean as well as the major rivers of the empire, including the Guadalquivir, Ebro, Rhone, Rhine, Tiber and Nile. 57. Transport by water was preferred where possible, and moving commodities by land was more difficult. 257. Vehicles, wheels, and ships indicate the existence of a great number of skilled woodworkers. 258. Land transport utilized the advanced system of Roman roads which were called viae. These roads were primarily built for military purposes. 259, but also served commercial ends. The in-kind taxes paid by communities included the provision of personnel, animals, or vehicles for the cursus publicus, the state mail and transport service established by Augustus. 224 relay stations were located along the roads every 7 to 12 Roman miles, and tended to grow into villages or trading posts. 216